the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow earth travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson and Honor Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call, 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. Brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Our call-in number, if you wish to participate, is 614-423-4220. Our show can be accessed on the mmunited.org website if you've happened upon us by chance. I'm your host, B.J. Edwards, and this is my world. And don't you forget it. Speaking of not forgetting, Memorial Day. Wow. Also called Declaration Day. Hey, by the way, look what I found. Huh? Look what I found back there. We found Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson is back, and we missed you, brother. We missed you.
Well, appreciate that. Glad to be back.
I know. It's troubling times.
Oh, yeah. I don't know which hornet's nest I'm coming back to.
Well, we talked yesterday, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what we talked about yesterday. Hey, if we're in the best of times, are we possibly headed for the worst of times? Is there a purposeful downhill moral slide in America where the truth is nowhere to be found in any of our institutions, including the church? The news plus up-to-date commentary on the times. We report, you decide. You can pick us up on www.mmunited.org. The number used to be 614-423-4220, but the alternative is 641-741-0816. We'd love for you to call in today, but don't think we can do it. We're still having Skype issues, and you can pray for us in terms of getting that worked out.
Working on it.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. I just got chills when I read this. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief. It was the epic of incredibility. It was a season of light. It was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope. It was a winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going directly to hell. Or is that heaven? In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in a superlative degree of comparison only. If these are the 21st century, the best of times, and we continue at our torrid pace towards Sodom and Gomorrah, slouching, I think we're going to find ourselves soon in the worst of times. And the sad thing about that is, it's not something we gravitated to. It's something that we are just incredibly blessed as a nation. And we don't seem to recognize what it took to get here. And more importantly, what it's going to take to remain. Again, for many, these are supposedly the best of times, the 21st century. But not for all. As a matter of fact, when one speaks of the best of times, morally, financially, It often depends on who you are. Does it not? For instance, if you're an unborn baby, or perhaps one that ended up on the operating room right after your birth, a decision table, if you will, you likely may not think this is the best of times. And for the mother, that will soon regret her body decision, once again, not the best of times. Technology has grown at an exponential rate. We've become a global neighborhood, but that means we're less likely to know our next door neighbor. I can remember when Mrs. BJ was asked to help out with her sorority, and the biggest thing that they had trouble with is getting those children out of high school to communicate with one another without a phone. The distance is just incredible. People feel less safe out in the streets than they did in the 70s and 80s when I was young. Didn't lock the door. You had to do it now. At that time, at the same time, more people are watching today. Security cameras and cell phones everywhere make it likely that a person will be found. But what about global warming and overpopulation? Is that not going to end the world in less than a decade? If you're the one that thinks morals are relative, ever-changing, and life has no meaning, then I suppose the 21st century, short of revisiting Sodom and Gomorrah, might well be the best of times. If you lean towards irresponsibility and like more government control in your life, then once again, these may well be the best of times for you. You can now not only choose who you'll spend your time with, regardless of sex, you can even change your sex, and that's okay. The best of times. Our government is now promising to provide for all your needs, and work is supposedly a thing of the past. Expectancy and demand is on the rise, and responsibility soon to be a thing of the past. Medically, we keep finding new diseases and new variations of diseases, many the direct result of our unnatural lifestyles. But of course, there is now the 21st century pill for that. And if you can't afford the pill or a sex change operation, the state, which is already up to its ears in debt, will pay for it. Either borrowing from our children's future or stealing the money from current residents of the land. Speaking of debt, if you think that writing a blank check with no funds to back it up is okay, then perhaps this again is the best of times for you. If you're an illegal immigrant, then these of course are the best of times for you and your family. If you're a criminal, things are looking up, especially if you were convicted of a drug crime, as your sins have now been forgiven, and as you now return to society, you find that you have it. What you have now is endorsed by those that previously confined you for the practice. And of course, you can vote now. Your sins have been forgiven, but there will be a long line at the voting place, being that the entire world has been invited and allowed to vote as well. It's the right thing to do. But soon, that can be done online. That's scary. So you likely won't even have to live in America to be included in our democratic process. Yep. The 21st century, the best of times. Crime is down, which is great. The best it's been in ages, they say. But then again, what ages ago was a crime is now permitted and in many cases, encouraged. Mr. Anderson, I think I'm starting to get the best of times and the worst of times thingy. Memorial Day is a national holiday set aside for remembering and honoring those who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. This holiday, which is currently observed every year the last Monday of May, Memorial Day was previously observed on May 30th, by the way, from 1868 to 1970. We did change a lot of things in the 70s, folks. Oh my, did we ever. Memorial Day weekend, we at Last Call hope you all have a fun, safe holiday. Enjoy the beach, pool, family picnics, class reunions. Going to one this week. Oh my. Or whatever festivities you have planned. But please don't forget that this is much more than just the unofficial start of summer. Memorial Day is first and foremost a date set aside to honor those who've made the ultimate sacrifice so that all of us could continue to enjoy the freedoms to celebrate this weekend in peace and safety. It's a time to visit graves and what they did for us. And you might remember as well, if you would, others who gave their all so that we have what we have in America today. Men, women, children, founders, and they gave their all. Think about the early Americans, the patriots. Many of them didn't wear a uniform. Many tending to their patriotic duties and even defending their homes and their children. Some of us might think as well about folks like Ammon Bundy, Orion Bundy, and their father, and Lavoy Finnegan, father and husband, who was killed on the political battlefield, and others that you know that may not have worn the uniform but are worthy of it. Our hats off and we salute everyone. Have a great Memorial Day, huh? Have a great Memorial Day. Busy week here in Ohio. Busy week, and we're going to get into that. I want to talk a little bit about immigration. Mr. Anderson was down at the southern border this week. And after we come back from break, we're going to talk about that. And what is it that we need to do about this immigration issue? A lot of people coming in, diluting, not assimilating. How, as Americans, are we to react to this and not make it political? B.J. Edwards, along with, what's his name? Thanks for tuning in. When we come back, the magic will continue.
Last Call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Our biker Bill, I got to mention that name at least once. Biker Bill says, "Welcome back, Mr. Anderson. BJ can't do it without you, so I'm going to try and get you a raise." Hey.
Thank you, Biker Bill. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be back.
Last week, U.S. Wednesday, the naked and badly beaten body of 14-year-old Irina Funa Diaz of Adelphi, Maryland, was found in a creek in Prince George's County, Maryland. MS-13 gang members were charged in the brutal murder, which is said that, according to reports, 2 of the gang members were scheduled to be picked up by Immigration Control previously, but because of the Attorney General and liberal Democrats of the state, the action was stymied and they weren't picked up. The gang members were not made available to the feds. The result? 1 dead young lady. This time. This week, California U.S. District Judge Haywood Gillum Jr. blocked money to build a wall for the border. Haywood, this one's for you, Judge. You know, according to our involuntary contributor, Mike Huckabee, there were nearly 100,000 apprehensions of illegal border crossers in April alone. And we're on track to hit 863,000 in the current fiscal year. That's official. And those are just the ones who got caught, not the ones who get in. Since 2010, the average number has been $300,000 and $500,000 a year. 500,000 illegal immigrants, aliens, trespassers a year. And I think it's much more than that, to be honest with you. At least double, triple that. Yet most Americans, at least it's going to be that way this year, have no idea just how bad the illegal immigration problem is. You can't depend anymore on the secular news media, the progressive news media. One and the same. Either the arm of the Democratic Party, or the Democratic Party is an arm of them. A new Harvard-Harris poll found that when Americans were asked about how many illegal aliens are arriving in the U.S.-Mexican border, only about 13% guessed correctly. That's about 2 out of every 15 people. Meanwhile, over 3/4 of the Americans' estimated illegal immigration levels are estimated vastly lower than they really are. So if we depend on the average, underinformed citizen, there, of course, is no crisis at the border, right? Now, as we look at the real figures, then that's a totally different story, especially if we'd be speaking about the church at length this morning. And it should be noted that many church services, I'm not talking about where you go on Sunday morning, but the services they provide to the public. And I can think of Catholic and Baptist efforts, for starters, are facilitating thousands of these illegals. Yet, when a gay, transgender, cross-dressing man is invited to a public library to speak to children 12 and up, preferably without the parents, and of course without the Bible, what does the church do? Yeah, you got it. Pray. I get that. But prayer without works is dead, folks. DOA. Prayer is not about what God is going to do for you. It's about asking Him what you need to do for Him and how you need to do it and when you need to do it. And you know what? You know when to do it. And you know the time is now. Mr. Anderson, you were down on the border, right?
I was, yeah. I crossed it.
No.
Oh, yeah. I went into Progreso, Mexico, little town just across the bridge from Mercedes, Texas, close to the Brownsville area. And, of course, I was there for a sad occasion with the passing of my mother, so I didn't have a lot of free time. I wanted to visit some of the processing centers, and I didn't get an opportunity. But when I crossed the bridge, what we do is park on our side, the USA side, leave our car there and walk across and go into this little town that is highly dependent on tourists and old folks who go over there for medicine and even to visit the dentist and doctors. They can get those things a lot cheaper over there in Mexico. And so I crossed over two different times. One time with my daughter, she wanted to get some ground cinnamon. It's good stuff.
Okay.
But so we went across, and then coming back, we have to go through this gauntlet of I will call them illegals. I don't know if they're illegals or claiming asylum or what these people were, but they lined the side of the bridge up to where the American Border Patrol is standing, and then they stopped them like halfway across the bridge. And then they're lined up into the town. And as I walk past this group of people, I observed that it looked like a line getting on board an airplane to me. They were well dressed, had cell phones. The kids seemed to be happier and better dressed than the local children that we saw there in the town. And of course, this isn't my first time visiting Progreso, and I have been there many times. And the poverty in this area is just sometimes unbelievable. You know, and the kids are struggling. They're out there with their styrofoam cups, asking for quarters, and thrilled if you put a coin in their cup. They're really, a lot of people there are really struggling. And then I compared this line on the bridge to the people who live there, and there's a marked difference between what I saw. Like I said, the kids sitting on the street with their mom or dad or whoever, with their little vendor shops and so forth, clearly look impoverished and struggling for survival and very dependent on the Americans coming over and buying their goods. The line on the bridge, like I said, they looked like they were lined up going on an airplane ride. They had nice luggage. They were well dressed. They were clean. They looked refreshed.
Luggage?
Luggage, yes. Some of them had better suitcases than I have. I'm not kidding.
Where are they getting all this?
Well, this is the question. So we walked past this group of people. I took a couple of snapshots with my cell phone and, got home to the park a gated community where my mom lived. And, we're listening to the news and the immigration reports and the crisis and so forth. Now, mind you, that Progreso is like very hard place to get to.
Is that where they breed Democrats? Maybe. That's why they're letting so many across the border.
Well, no. Actually, it's like they're getting the overflow from the other areas because some of the bridges are being closed. Up until a few months ago, they weren't getting any of these immigrants coming across the Progreso Bridge. They were mostly in Matamoros and Reynosa and farther east and west. So the next time I crossed the bridge, I went over with my brother. We went over and picked up some things that we needed. I ran out of eye drops for my prescription eye drops that I have to take. So we went over to pick those up. It was easier for me to do that than go to a doctor and get a prescription filled. So I went over there, got my eye drops, and on the way back, we stopped and talked to a group that had these nice pop-up tents sitting there, and they're
Pop-up tent. Where did they buy them? Is there some sort of a shop on the way that sells those to? Oh, wait a minute. What did they buy them? What did they have? Did they have credit cards?
Well, it was hard to converse with them, but we talked with them a little bit. These were Cubans. Yeah, Cubans.
Interesting.
And these Cubans came up from Nicaragua. That's what they told us. And we tried to find out more, but like I said, the language was difficult. I don't speak Spanish, neither does my brother. But I was very curious. Before we made it back to the bridge, I got to go back to the leather shop. We went into a leather shop to pick up a gift for my sister-in-law. And the guy in the leather shop was incredible, telling us about the city and the...
This is a leather shop on which side of the border?
In Progreso, in Mexico.
Okay.
He's Mexican. He seemed to be very astute. He loves Trump. He thinks that Trump is doing the right thing. And some of the reasons he gave us, for example, the tariff that people are sometimes complaining about.
Yeah.
The tariffs that they are putting on goods is helping the Mexican farmers. Because way he explained it, and I'll try to explain it the way he did. If you buy avocados, if you go to America and you buy avocados and you get up, the nice big ones might be like $4 a piece. Mm-hmm. And in Mexico, you might get them for $2. But with the tariff charges, the avocado suddenly becomes cheaper, so it's easier for the Mexicans to afford their own food because they can't. If they can get $2 in America, they can get $2 in Mexico for the same product. Mm-hmm. But if there's a tariff on it and it's a little more on the American side of the border, the avocados suddenly become cheaper for the poor Mexicans. Okay. So they can get the fruit and vegetables a lot cheaper. He talked about avocados and tomatoes, but his examples were, with the tariff, it brings the price down on their side of the border, makes it more affordable for the locals. Other things he talked about is...
This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson was recently south of the border in Texas, and he's reporting about what he saw down there and some interesting facts. Number one, the apparent, what do I want to say, money that's available and goods and services that are available to those immigrants who should have dusty shoes and sweatbands, but it doesn't look like that when they're coming at the border. Anyway, go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Well, anyway, I was talking about the tariff, but I'll get back to the immigrants a little bit because one of the problems, he calls them those guys. So those guys are causing big problems for the locals because one thing is stopping people from coming across the border because they're afraid. So he quoted that he lost, because of those guys, $20,000 in a few months. Mm-hmm. in his business. Now he's quite a businessman. I'll give him credit for that. That sounds like a lot of money, maybe, for a Mexican businessman, but he has a legitimate leather shop. He does well, and not doing as well as he has been because of those guys. Those guys over there are making crossing the border, making people nervous about crossing the border and going through the gauntlet back to the States. And the traffic problems on the bridge are outrageous because of the extra time it takes to go through vehicles and so forth. So he's losing money. And he says, if I'm losing this much money, if you look at all the shops in the area, you would see how they are also losing a great deal of money. Now there are small, poor families on the street with their little kiosk with goods to peddle, and they're probably suffering the most because each sale means a lot to them. They might make $5 or $6 a day, which is a lot to them, not much
Yep.
to us.
Yep.
And they're not seeing that. When I was leaving the town, about 3:00, 3:30 in the afternoon, there was hardly anybody in the area on the streets, which is usually packed with people. In the past that I've been down there, the restaurants and the vendors on the street and so forth just always had people around them. There was hardly anyone there except for the locals hanging out. He estimated that the village was probably losing around 20 million in the time that those immigrants started showing up.
Because of the immigrants.
Because of the immigrants.
Not because of Donald Trump, but because of the immigrants.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yes.
I got you, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, because the number of people showing up.
When we come back, I want you to wrap it up for us and give us your bottom line. B.J. Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. We hope you're going to have a great Memorial Day. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your friends.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Boy, it's just tough to get a straight story, to get objective facts from anywhere because everybody has such an agenda. It's shameful, and it's very, very destructive. And I think we're going to find out that very, very soon. Mr. Anderson was telling us about interesting facts about his trip to the border. What I'm hearing is that we're not, number one, getting the true story. That the immigrants are being taken care of a lot better than we would imagine. Now, I know some of them are coming across the border sick, but I don't know how the lines that you're talking about relate to, and I would imagine it's the kids that are coming across the border that are maybe helping the drug industry. You think, Mr. Anderson?
Well, from my experience, I can't make that assumption, but I do make that assumption because a different guy I talked to, Frank, who was working in the Rose Garden. That's what we call this little alley area where we sat down and had a beer together with each other, and my brother and I. And Frank sat down and he was talking about how he could fix us up with some girls and so forth, and he had these.
I've been to Mexico before. It must be a common thing down there.
Well, yeah, but he was
Sisters, aunts. But
yeah,
go ahead.
He
Go
was
ahead.
making the deals with these ladies that were standing on the bridge and looking for some extra income and so forth, and. He's not the type of guy I normally would sit down and talk with, but he kind of gave us some insight to some of the shenanigans that are going on behind the scenes there. So there was quite a contrast between the guy at the leather store and the guy in the Rose Garden.
Interesting.
Yeah, one was all about business, and the other guy was all about business.
Trade
Deals. He was wheeling and dealing.
He deals in people.
Fix us up.
He has a people intensive job. Okay.
Yeah. So he was kind of an interesting character too. It was an interesting contrast in my experience for that day. I would have loved to have been able to spend more time talking with more people there. Bottom line is, my personal eyesight showed me that there's a big contrast between the people on the bridge coming into America and the people who live in that town, in that area, and work and try to get by and make a living. And it wasn't the contrast that you would think from the media that we're getting up here in the north. We're hearing, oh, poor people, poor suffering people. I didn't see poor suffering people.
Ooh.
Not at this point. I saw poor suffering people, but they weren't people coming to America. They were people trying to make a living in Mexico, and that the every town has the big guys, right? This is the people who.
It's like biblical, like locusts coming through an area and consuming everything, and then going next door to the USA where they can continue their consumption. Do you think?
That might be a good analogy.
It's just as you're speaking, I'm thinking about when I used to go to school board meetings, and there'd be a reporter in there, and I sat the school board meetings for 10 years, a decade. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. I know Lord, but other than that, I can't tell you why.
Well, you learned something.
Yeah, and well, one of the things I learned is that what happened in that school board meeting, and what was reported, oftentimes was night and day. And it seemed like there was some kind of an agenda. And the agenda was always preparing for the next, what do you think that would be, Mr. Anderson, the next school board levy?
Maybe.
Everything was preparation for the next school board levy. Everything. Everything.
It's for the kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I'm surprised that they didn't dug through the community and just ask for everybody's credit card and say, we'll take care of what we need, and then whatever the balance is, you can take care of for us. Thank you very much. Matter of fact, I'd like to do that with all those people, those pro-levy folks. If you think that much about the schools, drop your credit card off at the principal's office, and he'll make you happy. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson. I'm growling.
It's amazing how much they use children. I don't care what agenda you have. They always seem to, they want to hit your feelings and compassion by talking about children.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In the immigration issue, they're making it about children. There's hardly any children in these lines. There are some, but like I said, I didn't see them suffering. And yeah, out of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, some of them are sick. Some of them, I think there were 4 or 5 that have died. Well, that happens in that big a number of people. I don't care what crowd you're in.
Yeah, you're acting like children don't die in the United States. U.S. citizen children don't die.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. And they're not telling you about the ones that got left in the desert and eaten by coyotes. They don't mention that at all. Not that I saw that, but I have heard about it, and there are people down there talking about that kind of thing happening. And if you know Texas, and if you know Mexico and along that border, I mean, we're talking 100 degrees in May.
Yeah.
It's hot. But
it's a dry heat.
Some of these people are being lied to and being brought to the land of milk and honey under false pretense, I'm sure.
They're being used. Of course they are. It's just useful idiots, I guess is what you would call it. But they're taking somebody's desperation and streets, paved with gold, and saying, man, just do this for us, and we'll get you over to those golden paved streets, and then they'll take care. Well, actually, they're trying to do that. They'll take care of all your needs, right?
Well, yeah. Now, here's another interesting thing, too, that came up from the guy at the leather shop. He was talking about it was costing these people somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 to make this trip.
How many would you say that you saw?
Yeah,
was it in the thousands?
Oh, no, not in Progresso.
Okay.
Maybe 200 or 300. I didn't have a way to count.
Times 5,000?
That were...
One day?
Yeah. Well, they're paying their way, because each time they come to a bus stop, so to speak, across a border or whatever, every time they encounter an official, there's a payoff. So they have to make a payoff to cross or get through from point A to point B to C to D. So when they get up to our border, they might be nearly broke. But at that point in time...
Well, the kind of money they're spending on suitcases, I can see. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're getting their comfort stuff, coolers, and they had coolers stacked up. They had you know, those big 5-gallon, whatever they are, water jugs
yeah.
sitting there with them on the bridge. And blow up beds. You know, those nice, big, fluffy ones? Not air mattresses, but blow up beds.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they got those blown up. And that was a question. Even the locals are asking, where are they getting this stuff? How are they getting their phones charged? How are they paying for their phones? You know, I mean...
Well, there's some of that prayer working, right?
Phone bill's got to come to an address, doesn't it?
I don't know. I don't know. This is just absolutely crazy.
And he was talking about these guys with $1,000 phones. I'm like, you know, I'm crossing the bridge and I'm taking pictures of guys that have phones nicer than mine. Give me a break. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. But there's a lot of money being changed, and there's a lot of people profiting. And this is why the big guys in the city of Progresso aren't doing something about this problem. They're not worried about the local people suffering. They're making money off of these people coming across the bridge. There's nothing else that can explain it.
Hey, I've got a to-do item I want to get up. Actually, I've got a couple of them today. According to LifeSite News, Target department stores are not only offering clothing and accessories celebrating the gay lifestyle to adults and children, but the company has also pledged to donate to a nonprofit that trans students and teachers in the LGBT politics and advocacy support. Target's website has several pages dedicated to the products that promote the LGBT lifestyle, many of which are specifically... How is Target still in business? Many of which are designed specifically for children. For example, Target offers shirts that declare, "Love my dads," and another says, "Love my moms." Other shirts are emblazoned with a rainbow flag bearing the word "Pride" superimposed on it. Target is also donating $100,000 to Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, that's Gleason, an organization whose primary focus is on indoctrinating school-age students into organizing gay clubs in public schools across the nation. Gleason also offers lesson plans for elementary school children on gender-neutral programs and terminology as part of the Common Core curriculum, as well as introducing gender ideology to third graders. For adults, there are the Pride Adult Gender Inclusive Iridescent 5-panel hat, Pride Striped Bisexual Flag Bandana, Pride Striped Transgender Flag Bandana, Pride Adult Striped Gender Inclusive Jumpsuits, and a number of other accessories and articles of clothing. I got this information from Tim Wildman, and on B.J. Edwards' Facebook page, you can connect and you can sign a petition, or you can support Tim Wildman. I appreciate them doing what they're doing, bringing that to our attention. We've got to do something, folks.
That's just crazy. So many crazy things going on around us.
But it's because we're not doing anything. As you and I, we know better, but we're remaining silent. We're not doing anything.
By the way, we got our Skype up, and our call-in number 614-423-4220 should be working.
Okay.
In fact, we would like someone to call in and test it.
Yeah. Hi, Biker. 614-423-4220. B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson. I want to talk to you about your backyard and what's happening there. And I want to share an experience that happened in my backyard this week. And what is going on behind the scenes with regards to perverts trying to influence your children into making bad decisions. And they want to get them as early as possible. B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call. I'm sorry about that. I'm still on automatic pilot here.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, BJ Edwards.
We're doing the best we can, folks. We're doing the best we can.
We should be professional by now.
Yeah. It's only been 5 years. I'm not used to doing that. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. Let's talk about your backyard. This week...
Mine needs mowed.
Yeah. 3 issues for this citizen in Ohio. Number 1, the state of Ohio has a Senate bill. This is a Republican Congress in Ohio. And they're considering SB 11, which homosexuals, deviants sexually, whether it be transgender, confused, want to present themselves as victims. And in order to get out of this, now mark my words, they don't want equal status. They can't have that. They want special rights. And those special rights are going to step on the toes of conservatives, especially those of the Christian flavor. I made calls to all my state senators this week about SB 11 here in Ohio. I personally talked with several offices, left messages for others. My main message was that I was concerned about the damage that just talking about homosexual victimhood, and if it is, it's self-induced, by the way, has on public opinion and the family in general. By merely holding hearings under the assumptive that a certain group of individuals might be victimized, we are in essence giving these confused souls in the LGBT community free advertisement for their cause. Think about this. Free advertisement. It doesn't have to pass, because next year it's some fool, some Democrat, I don't know what the difference is going to present this again. And yet even more pressure, more bullying, more propaganda until we give in. Free advertisement for their cause. It's framed in a way that is most advantageous for them. Remember what old BJ tells you, he who frames the question wins the debate, right? I also accentuated the importance to a society and the inherent need of all children for the natural family. Of course I did. And if the bill passed, it would then make at least 2 new set of victims. Christians and children. We'd simply be substituting supposedly 1 set of victims for 2, right? Now, I have a challenge for those of you who live in Ohio and other states, I'd imagine, because the same thing is going on, I'm sure. And that is, please, don't let my efforts and the efforts of other good people like Linda Harvey of Mission America, don't let those efforts die for lack of a second. Maybe you won't say it the same way Linda, myself, Mr. Anderson, or the other good people we know do, and that's okay. What is not okay is if you do not sustain our efforts. What you feed will live. What you starve will die. The ball is in your court, conservative Christians. What will you do? Think about what we're talking about. Think about what we're trying to promote. Think about the anatomically, think in those terms. You know, if you go to an elevator and somebody passes gas in the elevator, well, don't be surprised if folks look at you funny and try to avoid you. It's not behavior you want to exhibit around your family and friends, is it? Let alone strangers? Yeah, I know. I dare compare homosexual loving behavior to flagellation, right? So I'm going to apologize. My sincere apologies to all the phlegmatists across, I just invented another word, Mr. Anderson. Phlegonists across the fruited plains. Come on, folks. Bring some common sense to the table for a change.
Fruited plains, huh?
Mm-hmm. Think about what it is that you're supporting in absentia or refusing to help out with because you won't be liked, because you're confused. How could you be confused? How could you possibly be confused? Let me tell you how. All you hear from the news media, all you hear from your congressman, they're debating it. They're debating whether a man should take his... No, I'm not even going to go there. I can't even say it on the radio. But they're debating the right to do that. Are you serious? Well, I don't know, BJ. I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental. Jesus wasn't judgmental. If there's a hell,
then there's a judge.
Mm-hmm. Look in Ohio and look in Delaware County where I live. It's time for the public to start acting like we are in the greatest of times. This week in Delaware County, Ohio. Did you get that clip, Mr. Anderson? Were you able to download that from the internet?
I was able to.
Okay.
Which clip?
The director of libraries.
I'll have to go back.
The one I sent you, the YouTube clip that you said you didn't know whether you could get.
Yeah, I got the short one and the long one.
Yeah, I'm going to want to play them all. Let's play the long one first. This is a go ahead.
It's 8 minutes.
8 minutes
to break time.
Yeah, okay. And then we come back from break. I'm going to explain something to you. And in his own words, the director of the Delaware County Library will tell us what's going on.
We have an issue going on in Delaware, Ohio right now. We're going to be having the summer reading series is actually going to be featuring a program called The Art of Drag for children ages 12 to 19.
Art
and
of
I
Drag.
wanted to give you the facts about this particular situation. I spoke with George Needham this morning. George Needham works for the library as a taxpayer-funded employee, and he clarified for me with 100% certainty that the Art of Drag is a taxpayer-funded program that will be at the Delaware Orange County Library.
Stop that for a second,
June
Mr. Anderson.
5th.
Stop that
when
for
I
a second.
asked him how this type of a situation was selected and who the age group was.
Does it really matter whether this is taxpayer supported or not? Think about this. Does it really matter? Don't give the enemy any more ammunition. And I love what this lady's doing. Don't get me wrong. But let's be smart here. If you give them an obstacle and they'll say, well, okay, we won't pay for it, but he's going to be in there anyway. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say taxpayer. Well, maybe it's church supported too because of the silence.
True.
That's
true.
my 2 cents.
Told me it was for children ages 12 to 17 in the spirit of an inclusive environment. And I said, well, speaking of inclusive nature, what happens when someone who identifies as a teenager wants to participate in this program?
Great
How
question.
will you handle that if it's about an all-inclusive type of situation? He was not able to answer that question for me. Then he moved on saying that Bugs Bunny, I'm serious, Bugs Bunny is an
This
example
guy's a director.
of transgenderism in cartoons. And I had to explain to him that Bugs Bunny is not it's a cartoon. It's not a real thing. And that Bugs Bunny dressing in female characters or using trickery to run away from his opponents isn't the same thing as the real world implications of bringing individuals into a public situation to teach children the art of drag. I then asked him if drag audiences or participation, if these types of things were appropriate for children. I said, will children be able to then go to bars to watch actual drag performers after this? And he said, well, no, of course they wouldn't. And I said, right, in the same way that they couldn't go to watch exotic dancers perform. Exotic dancing is an art, and would, to those who perform it, they would also call it an art. So are you going to open up the library for exotic dancing so that women can come in and talk about pole dancing? Is that something you are also going to be using taxpayer funding for? He was not able to answer that question, and then started getting very defensive, kind of deflecting back to Bugs Bunny again. So here's the concern. This isn't about being hateful. It's not about being nasty. It's about, are we going to just allow tax dollars, resources, public places to fund whatever political ideology that's going to come from those who are in charge of scheduling events? Just as we wouldn't want, or it wouldn't make sense to have exotic dancers or a pole dancer or adult-oriented themes coming in to meet with children ages 12 to 17, I don't think it's appropriate to have men who perform the art of drag coming in to meet with children ages 12 to 17, when both of those environments are not an environment that children could actually go to these things and watch a performance. George Needham's telephone number, if you'd like to call him and ask questions yourself, to verify that yes, your tax dollars are being used for this, and yes, these are taxpayer-funded employees.
I'm sorry, what?
Can we give that number out? I don't know whether we can publicly say it on the air.
I don't know either.
Okay. Well, if it comes up, just mute it. Thanks.
These efforts. It's also very important to know that I asked about FBI and BCI background checks and fingerprinting. I said, I owned a home health care agency.
You don't trust
I was
them?
a big brother, big sister, volunteer in my community. We had to be BCI background checked. How are you handling this for these adults that are coming?
The interesting thing about that comment about background checks, do you know how you have to scrutinize Sunday school teachers?
Yeah.
Let's compare things here, apples to apples.
Go ahead. This is Melissa Atkinson, and she's running, by the way, for a position at the state of Ohio.
There are no background procedures in place, and they don't really have an answer for that. And I said, okay, what's your standard operating procedure when organizations that you disagree with would like to use taxpayer-funded resources and different funds to host events? And he wasn't able to answer that. Then I let him know that I was a huge gun nut, that my husband and I own 2 AR-15s, that, we teach classes at our home. And I asked, would I be able to come in and to host an event like that? And that's when he said, well, no, because we couldn't let you come in. We won't allow guns in here. And I said, so you allow adult entertainers to come in for things that aren't appropriate for children. So I tell you what, I will bring my prop materials in, and we can start hosting Second Amendment courses at the library if we're going to open this up for taxpayer dollars. Here's the problem. When you start integrating political ideology into programs that impact children, and you aren't buttoned up on any level of standard operating procedures or any type of protective measures to make sure that everything is cleared and okay, you're absolutely opening Pandora's box to anybody at any time coming in to use a public facility and taxpayer resources. And what are they going to do at this point? Are they going to discriminate against people who are dancing exotically as their profession and tell them that they can't come in and meet with children? Where do we draw the line as a public and say, hey, certain things are appropriate for kids and other things are not? In my point of view, and most rational folks, anything that a child couldn't attend after hours where these things actually happen are probably not good things to have at the public library funded by the taxpayer as a form of entertainment for kids.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do you all realize how insane this is? And this doesn't border on child abuse. It is child abuse.
What?
B.J. Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. Your last call when we come back. More on our library director. Man.
People moving out, people moving in. Why? Because of the color of their skin. Run, 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 but you sure can't hide. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Hey, BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Today we're talking, by the way, 614-423-4220. You want to call in? Hey, if you're en route to New York, to Hillary's, give us a call. Let us know how the weather is out there and the traffic. Give us a traffic report live. BJ Edwards again and Mr. Anderson.
I missed a call from Biker Bill. You can try again.
Okay. He was probably just testing the line.
Seems to be working.
We talked about the libraries in Delaware County, and we're going to talk about that. Matt Staver, this is another public service, and this is also on BJ Edwards' Facebook page. You're going to find a petition generated by Matt of the Liberty Council, and we recommend you consider signing it. And for those of you whom are still living under a rock, this is with regards to the federal level equality efforts on the part of those victims, those sodomite victims who want to talk to your children, but they can't really talk to them if the children don't respect them. And how can they respect them if they're second-class citizens? And then we're going to demand that they... Anyway, for those of you whom, again, are under a rock, this is Equality Act H.R. 5. It passed the House, and now it's going to be in the Senate. And it is a grave threat to our freedom. And by the way, you Democratic Christians, the bill passed the House last Friday with unanimous Democrat support. Now it's officially in the Senate where it must be stopped. The New York Times, which we all know is a conservative publication, chuckle, says it's all in for the LGBT agenda. Recently published this about H.R. 5, the intentionally misnamed Equality Act. The legislation, which amends the Civil Rights Act of 1964, prohibits discrimination of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, more to come, by the way, in both the public and private sectors. It explicitly states that individuals cannot be denied access to a locker room or dressing room. Any of y'all got daughters out there? You're not sure? Yeah, I get it. In other words, biological males who claim to be women must be given access to women's restrooms, dressing rooms, locker rooms. Folks, this is not about victimhood. It's about dominance. And this applies to churches as well, by the way. Religious employers, organizations, and colleagues. They as well must allow men who claim to be women into women's previously private spaces. That's diversity, folks, right? That's because there's no religious exemption in the so-called Equality Act. Instead, LGBT rights trample your First Amendment freedom rights, and that's a dangerous first. But again, folks, I wouldn't chase after that. This is about decency. This is about sanity.
Right and wrong.
Representative David Cicilione, Democrat, Rhode Island, the openly homosexual House sponsor of the Equality Act, announced, "We cannot allow claims of religious freedom to be used to discriminate against a LGBT individual." Oh. Put another way, LGBT rights trump yours under H.R. 5. The best word for that, by the way, is not equality. It's called tyranny. Let me tell you some things that could happen here. Male rapists who go to female prisons? Oh, yeah. You're guilty of rape. Now, where would you like to go? Well, you know, Judge, today I'm kind of feeling feminine. Can we go to the feminine side? Well, sure, I don't want to discriminate. Women who use male pronouns to talk about men may be arrested, fined, and banned from social media platforms. Girls will stay home from schools when they have their periods to avoid harassment by boys in mixed-sex toilets. Girls and women no longer have a right to ask for female medical staff or intimate care providers, including elderly and disabled women who are at serious risk of sexual abuse. Female security officers will no longer have the right to refuse to perform pat-down or intimate searches of males who say they're female. And women undergoing security checks will no longer have the right to refuse having their searches performed by men claiming a feminine identity. Are you blind? Can you not see what's happening here? Let's circle back to Delaware, Ohio. The director of libraries in Delaware County of Ohio, and during a recent meeting stated that he invited a cross-dressing homosexual to his library system to educate children. But it's innocent because it's on how to cross-dress. And of course, more important, how to do makeup. I'm serious. That was his most recent stated reason for exposing children to the abomination of sodomite behavior. However, 2 weeks prior, he's on record, and it is recorded, that he wanted to have sex style given exposure. Not makeup, the sex style. In a positive light, of course. We can't have negatives here, can we? We must be fair and balanced. We're talking about sodomy here, folks. Sounds reasonable, right? Educational, right? No Bibles or parents allowed in the room, of course. The Delaware County Library Director tells local reporters that Drag 101, and that's what they call this, is to add to children's education. But you heard Melissa Atkinson on the other line. Caller, your first name and what's on your mind?
Hello, Biker Bill.
Hey, Biker Bill.
Oh, we have a famous guy.
Yeah, we said it twice. Anything on your mind, brother? Or are you just testing the line for us?
What?
Anything on your mind, or are you just testing the line for us this morning?
Oh, there's plenty on my mind. This is one of your. This is a fascinating show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We intended it to be that way. we actually prepared for this, Biker Bill, and we appreciate you listening. Yeah, we did. We did. What do you think about? I mean, what they're trying to do to children, and I know that you're in the Detroit area, and I know. Excuse me.
He's kind of breaking up. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Bill, you're breaking up a little bit on us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said they're not trying. They're doing it.
Yeah, they are. They are. They are. And you gotta think about how we got to this point to begin with. Not just the point to where we would actually think about having a sodomite or a transgender or somebody that's sexually confused to be speaking to children, but how did they get in the position that they got in to begin with? And we can blame this on uncles and next door neighbors. But we do still have to recognize the difference between right and wrong, do we not?
Well, we should, but this goes beyond. I mean, this is insane and criminal, and it should not be going on. And I do not understand why we are the only ones up in arms about this. What about the people in those school districts? Are they all down with this?
I talked to a parent who's not involved in this the other day, and they said, well, I'm going to have to do some research on it.
Oh, my gosh.
And
really?
I'm going, okay. And then they said, but, you know, the area, and he lives not next door to the library, but maybe five minutes away from it. And he says, well, in this area, there probably won't be that many kids attending anyway. But we don't know that. And if it's just one child that takes the bait. I mean, the Bible talks about something like that, doesn't it? If we don't do something to stop it, that we get kind of lashed as well. Isn't there something like that in the Bible?
Something about a millstone?
Well,
Yeah, that too.
what are we stop it? What are we going to do to stop it?
Let me tell you what we've done. Go ahead.
As long as we keep electing Democrats, it's not going to stop.
I'm not going to disagree with that. Mr. Anderson and I, and this just didn't happen accidentally. There was on the internet and made several phone calls to people that I know and people that they know that they knew. And we had a meeting yesterday. And there's a lot of people that are actively engaged in this. And what you need to do, what we have to do as a public, and this is a public opinion war, is you need to light a little fire under the George Needhams of the world and or the people that put him into the position that he's in. Actually, both. And that is what we're doing. And I believe, obviously prayer is important too. You do have to have that prayer support. But God's not going to work unless we do. And the fact that we're doing what we're doing, and we're making the contacts, and we're exposing what they're doing. I mean, the director of the library has already been caught in at least 2 lies. Put your hands up in the air and say, okay, well, why bother? And you know what? That's part of the answer to what the question you're asking. And they do want to get elected again. And they know that the homosexual community has at least a lot of loud sounds, and can produce a lot of people, although a lot of them are college students or paid participants, but they can still provide a lot of people. But they just stick their finger in the air, and they wet it, stick it in the air, and sense. But they need to understand that this won't happen anymore. This just will not happen anymore. If you don't stop it in the libraries with the children, then they're going to come take your children out of the home, and they're already doing that.
Yeah, I know.
And re-educating them, getting their minds right.
The way things are going, it makes you wonder when, not if, but when they're going to outlaw the Bible.
Well, we've talked about the best of times, and we talk about the worst of times. And although things might appear on the surface, I mean, in America, the poor live like kings and queens compared to other nations, Bill.
Right.
And it's tough.
I know.
When you're sitting on your couch, watching life by on the TV, having your favorite adult beverage, and you got a roof over your head. I mean, come on. What, me worry? Right? But what's happening underneath? It's like cancer. You don't see it. It's not that obvious until it gets to be too late. And there's good people like yourself. And like I mentioned, Linda Harvey and a lot of the people that we met with yesterday, and a lot of the people that we've conversed with on our show that do get it, do see the storm clouds. And the problem is, yes, to wake up the general public.
Well, think about it. How long we've seen the storm clouds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, how long have I known you? I met you through joining Minutemen United, and
probably 20,
when
25 years.
Huh?
Probably 20, 25 years.
Yeah, and I first saw that site, and I don't know if it was that bad then, as bad as I thought it was, maybe, or not, but I thought, this is great. They just don't know. But now, I've told them. They know. And I get so much blowback from trying to get people to see that we got to do something. We can't just pray about it anymore. And there's nothing, I'm not disparaging prayer. I think prayer is firing a winning shot. That is a separate issue. I believe in prayer, but we got to do something, or we're going to wake up one day and either be under Sharia or a totalitarian communist government, which sometimes I wonder if we're not already.
I hear you, Bill. We're going to have to go to a break. I appreciate you calling in, and more than that, I appreciate you, your heart, and your support for what we do, brother. You have no idea. God bless you. Biker Bill from Michigan. Thank you very much, sir. God bless you.
I really wanted to talk to your expert there, Mr. Anderson, on what he saw on the border, but that's all right. You kick me off.
No. Hang on through break. Okay, hang on through break, and we'll get a little bit into that. But I'm kind of want to get into this public library deal and what's going on with the kids. Is it okay if I do that?
Yes, sir.
All righty.
Boss, you can do whatever you want.
All right, Bill. Again, thanks for calling in.
Hey, bro.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, BJ Edwards.
We were talking about. Thank you, Biker Bill, for calling in, brother. We were talking about Delaware County and what was going on in Ohio, but there's also bills that are going on all over the United States. I read an article the other day, and this is an incredible article. It's on transgenderism, a leftist weapon against the family by Pat Doherty. And this was in Eagle Forum. The Los Angeles Times recently published an approving article about schools introducing kindergartners to gender dysphoria, otherwise known as transgenderism. The article came on the heels of a California charter school, without notifying parents, held a gender reveal ceremony for a confused little boy. The teacher then read to the other children, now confused as well, from a book written by a dysphoric teenager. They're writing books. All this with the glowing approval of the radical gay, lesbian, straight educational network, Gleason. We mentioned that earlier today. Leftists insist that this kind of activity in schools is necessary to make dysphoric children nice, innocent sounding, but alarming word at the same time, right? Dysphoric. Children feel accepted and secure. And this is based on what? Folks, there's a much darker agenda at work here. And it's at least a century old. Actually, it's 2,000 years old or better. But I digress. If you were educated before the onset of Common Core, you probably read in the 1932 British novel Brave New World, one aspect of the utopia described by Aldous Huxley was the forced sexualization of children. Young children were sent into the gardens naked and encouraged to engage in ordinary erotic play. Any child who resisted was trundled off to the assistant superintendent of psychology to determine if he or she was mentally ill. Christians are crazy, aren't they? Conservatives are crazy, aren't they? Donald Trump, oh, pray for him. Oh, Nancy Nunn, we'll pray for him. Yeah. Why would a totalitarian government do this, by the way? The answer is well elucidated by J. Douglas Johnson in a recent essay from Crisis Magazine. Johnson explains that the term sexual revolution was coined in 1920 by Dr. Wilhelm Reich, an atheist psychologist in Sigmund Freud's clinic, who joined the Communist Party. He also referred to himself as a Freudian Marxist. Reich devoutly believed in the Marxist idea of utopia, but he recognized the problem with Marx's proposition that such human happiness could be achieved only by the abolition of religion. Or they just sit there and do nothing. When Judeo-Christian religious beliefs were so deeply ingrained in Western countries, how could their influence be eradicated? Right, class? What Reich knew was that the Soviet-style brute force couldn't accomplish this goal. but Western societies could be hollowed out from within. And the best way to accomplish this was to spark a sexual revolution. This is good stuff, folks. A sexual revolution that would destroy the natural family. That's the author's word, not mine. That's the author's words. The family was key. Religious faith is passed down through the family, with parents not only teaching children the faith, but taking them to church. But fatherless families tend not to be church-going families. Amen? So the goal was to remove fathers, and what better way to accomplish that than through widely accepted sexual permissiveness? Right correctly, no fault divorce, right correctly surmised that the way to knock the props out from underneath the American family would be to condition Western man to see contraception, fornication, pornography, sodomy, etc. as a perfectly normal and not unhealthy thing to do. Reich also urged implementation of sex education in schools as the best way to divest parents from their moral authority. Schools teach 4 things. What? Life has no meaning. Morals are relative. Man's the measure of all things. And yeah, the state's your daddy. Hello. The result of this officially endorsed permissiveness and the absolute intolerance for any competing views, even into dismissing parents' objections to what the schools are going to do for their children, is an exploding illegitimacy rate from 3% in 1929, listen to this, to about 40% today. Let that set in. Fatherless families weaken ties to religious faith, in turn creating the fertile ground needed for the government to plant its totalitarian roots. First, the government destroys the family, then it has no choice but to ride in on a white horse and take the family's place because of the chaos. Oh, thank God for government. What would we do without him? Viewed in this light, the current official enthusiasm for pushing transgenderism, homosexuality, sexual freedom on young children makes more sense. When it comes to sex and gender, there are no rules. The schools, the media, our politicians insist. And anyone who suggests otherwise, even your mom and dad, kids, they're a bigot. You can do whatever you want to do. You can even be whoever you want to be and whatever you want to be. And the benevolent government will be in there to pick up the pieces. This has nothing to do with helping confused children, folks. As Joy Pullman writes in The Federalist, those kids are pawns, acceptable collateral damage in the culture war. And the goal of the war is the obliteration of the family, of human nature, and as our society as we know it. The author comes to a conclusion, and I don't totally agree with this, but I understand why he would say what he's saying. The ever-provocative Camille Paglia has pointed out that throughout history, a society's embrace of androgyny generally precedes civilization's collapse. Consider ancient Greece and the Weimar Germany. Maybe we should start teaching history again. Or we could just devote school time to gender reveal ceremonies. The choices are. Androgyny is a combination of masculine and feminine characteristics, usually used to describe characters or persons who have no specific gender. Ambiguity may often be found in fashion, gender identity, or sexual lifestyle. That article is so revealing. Again, I don't agree totally with the conclusion. I think that the sex is a huge instrument to use. But the destruction of the family is the key. Once you get the family gone, out of the road, then Katie bar the door. Katie bar the door. I talked to Bill, and I've been in this battle for 25 years with the church. I've been in a battle totally with 30 years, over 30 years. Came from the secular side, came from the church side, and now I'm coming from what I would consider the family side. I've learned an awful lot in all those exercises. From the school board meetings, to the Tea Party meetings, to running for this and running for that, and being chairman of this. I don't look back on it as a failure. I'm more prepared now than I ever was. For what? I don't know. And Lord, I'm not asking for more, okay? I'm not asking for more. But whatever it is you want to throw my way. I relayed the story of going through a mall, walking through a mall with my fishing shirt on, which was promoting Jesus Christ, and was stopped by a self-proclaiming atheist. And for the next hour, that atheist couldn't stop listening to me. And what he was hearing was what I had learned over a 30-plus year time period. And this was no average citizen. Undergraduate from Cornell, master's from Harvard, and he couldn't stop listening to me. And then I think I relayed the next time I talked to him at the same mall 2 weeks later. He made sure that he came up to me and started talking to me again. But he wanted to make sure that he was no longer an atheist. Well, actually, he misspoke. He's no longer an atheist. He's now agnostic. So you never know. You'd never know who you're affecting. You may think that you're pushing your children away from you. But you do have the responsibility to tell them the truth. And how long will you wait? Where will they be next week? Where will they be tomorrow? And how will you feel about that? Children are critical and in the path of some very nasty people. And it's up to us, whether they're our children or not, to make sure that they know what the truth is. And there's 3 ways to tell the truth. We've been trained not to talk about the Bible or Jesus Christ, because if you start talking about that, then people just, oh, nope, sorry, conversation's over with. But you can tell them about common sense. And you can tell them about natural laws. And you know the strange thing is that what the Bible says, what nature confirms, and what common sense is, they're all the same. You can call it biblical truth. You can call it wisdom. Or you can call it natural. But they're all the same. So you can talk about nature, and you're talking about the Bible. And they won't shut you down. And you're not a chicken for doing that. You're wise as a serpent. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. It's for the children, you know.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Of 100 circling camps, they have builded him an altar in the evening dews and damp.
Memorial Day, my goodness.
By the dim and flaring lamps,
Brings back a lot of memories. meant to touch your hearts. I don't know whether you heard about this or not, Mr. Anderson. In Dallas, Texas, while gay conversation therapy has long been thought to be ineffective, there may be a promising new method for converting gays. It seems that local gay man, Landon Ellison, was out protesting a Chick-fil-A in his city Wednesday morning when he got hungry. And Chick-fil-A was the only restaurant within walking distance. He looked around and made sure that his fellow protesters weren't looking and slipped into the restaurant and ordered a classic chicken sandwich. It's probably terrible, he sneered at the cashier, who only smiled and said it was her pleasure to have her place of work insulted. I bet it tastes like hate, he retorted. Yet, he was so hungry, what else could he do? And you're not going to believe what happened next. When Ellison's food was served seconds later, something miraculous happened. He took a bite of the sandwich and suddenly found he was no longer attracted to men. In fact, I saw this on the internet. The woman who served him the sandwich instantly appeared attractive to him.
Uh-oh.
How you doing, he said, raising his eyebrows suggestively in her direction. She just smiled and told him it was her pleasure to be hit on and walked away. Emerson emerged from the restaurant in a daze, fell to his knees, and lifted his hands and eyes to the heavens in praise and thanksgiving for the amazing transformation that had just occurred in his life.
Oh, those chicks.
Babylonian Bee, Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A. I was going to play the rest of the director of the library. How long is that clip, Mr. Anderson?
Well, we had about 3 minutes left
Okay.
of that one.
Yeah.
Here's a quickie one.
Okay.
I'm telling you that there's more, and not just about who goes into bars, it's about the whole thing about sexual questioning.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of sexual questioning that goes on with women dancing on poles as well and performing in those types of venues. So we need to make sure we...
Been in one of those.
Oh, well, okay. I'm telling you, though, there are organizations for adult dancers in the exotic industry. It's also for adults, and those people probably have questions about that environment as well. So I want to go ahead and schedule something with you. There's nothing different.
I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
So you're not going to do it, and you're saying, I just want to reiterate this. You're saying on a recorded line, I'm okay, George Needham, who runs this program, I'm okay with men dressing as women, having access to children that I didn't background check, coming in, having access to kids to teach the art of drag, but it's a different thing when it's women who perform in bars in the adult arena for exotic dancing.
That's that.
That was the director of the Delaware County Library, who's on record as saying, well, whatever you think you want to hear. That's what he's on the record as. You know, Mr. Anderson, last week we did some stealth work, and you'll appreciate this. Speaking of George
Needham.
Yep. By the way, Jerry Nadler, whose sole mission in life is to bring down the president, has no proof of collusion of any kind between Russia and the president. He does, however, have a campaign consultant that is an agent for a major Russian propagandist who is currently in prison. So does that mean Nadler and the Russians are colluding? I could say it does. Nadler's campaign consultant is Ezra Friedlander, a lobbyist and political consultant. Friedlander also represents Russian propagandist Kyro Vyshinsky, the head of the Russian state news media outlet. Vyshinsky is currently in the Ukrainian prison for treason. I wonder if he wants some company. Anyway, our crack last call investigators, speaking of Democrats, was able to find and secure a current Democratic leadership application. It's an application form. Let me read you just a few of the questions on the form. And this is required if you're going to be a good Democrat. Application for leadership position in the Democratic Party. Question number 1. Would you be willing to tell a lie in order to promote the Democratic Party? Question number 2. On an actual form, a Democrat form, do you have any problem with making misstatements if the ends justify the means and to hide the truth? How many lies do you think you can say in one 24-hour time period? Would you lie to emotionally bully a distractor? And there was an extra point question. Have you ever been caught in a lie and then managed to make the person that caught you the villain? And by chance, did you manage to have them convicted of your crime? I think that's very interesting, Mr. Anderson. On the actual Democrat leadership form. Crazy times, crazy times. The president, as usual, is under attack. I want to get into something that Bill brought up. Sometimes this can sound so hopeless. And one of the problems we have, other than lack of knowledge, is a lack of vision. And this is worth repeating. What would happen if there were no such thing as a family? No father, mother, brother, or sister, grandparents, aunts, or uncles? Just happy-go-lucky humans eating, mating, sleeping with no affiliation, no worries. The ultimate in diversity. Where would the human race species be today if that were the case, if there were no family? Maybe the better question is, would there be a human species? Or would mankind have gone the way of the dodo bird, saber-toothed tiger, and woolly mammoth without the family institution? Given that family is so crucial to the survival of all mankind, why are so many Americans intent on corrupting its purpose, structure, and content? Seemingly hell-bent on destroying the entire idea of the family itself. Why would we do that? Here at the Natural Family Foundation, we realize that we exist in a politically and emotionally charged environment where today's, because of our democratic process, public opinion makes tomorrow's laws, and those laws become the next generation morals. Isn't that what Bill was talking about? People getting it? Enough people getting it? We're public opinion driven. You know what got Jesus hung on the cross, don't you? There was an election, an early election, right? Barabbas won that one. We're trying to tip the scales at the Natural Family Foundation of public opinion to once again support and defend the natural family. Our laws should protect and encourage the growth of that family unit. They should support the growth of that family unit. Today's laws, go ahead.
Got to think about Hungary again, and they recognize that, and they're doing something about it in their public and political arena, as they are passing laws to encourage large families, and they want Hungarians. They want baby Hungarians, not baby whatevers.
Baby Mohammeds. Today's laws, as a direct result of today's public opinion, work against the family unit. We just talked about a library, a state law, and a federal law. Remember the article that I read? Communism, socialism. This is about power. And the people that are aspiring for it have no idea what that end result is going to be. Because once they get the power, they're going to want control. And to get control, you're going to need structure. And if there's no family to provide that, oh, you can beat on them for a while. And you can shoot and hang and torture them. But in time, you're going to lose that match. But if we destroy the United States in the process, they don't care. They don't know to care. These wizards of wisdom. The family is being corrupted. And our goal at the Natural Family Foundation is to not just stop, but turn the process around. We recognize the need to change public opinion, make it more favorable to the family as versus trying to destroy it through emotional blackmail. Victim, victim, victim. Every day we see yet another law or crusade whose singular resolve, whether intended or not, is to chip away at the foundation of the family institution. To accomplish our natural family goal, the first thing we need to be done is to expose the critical importance of the family and note that the problems we are experiencing in the USA are due in large part to the fact that we have allowed our original foundation, the family, to be attacked on all fronts. Secondly, we need to make these facts important to as many Americans as we can. History records it, modern-day sociologists advise us, and our prison systems all attest to the power of the natural family and what happens when it is dismantled. We will become a lawless society because we have tampered with the structure, the family, the form, one man, one woman, and the practice of the family unit, the dog wagging the tail in today's America. Institution controlling what the family's going to do. What happened in Rome and Greece and other former great civilizations will surely be visited upon our great nation if we do not do something and soon to protect the cornerstone of all society. These approval numbers, by the way, that's one of the reasons we have posted the Natural Family Pledge to our website. We explain the natural family composition, why it's important, and the next step is to get a noticeable assemblage of commonsensical Americans to commit that they believe and are willing to defend this time-honored institution. These approval numbers will help as we start a defense of the natural family movement. This means at the local, state, and federal levels, we need to have defend the natural family laws, acts, and or ordinances initiated. Not laws that work just the opposite, which we're trying desperately to do now. Can you imagine how powerful several million Americans agreeing with our pledge could help in this project? With public opinion, and we are in a public opinion war, numbers rule. They're the king. Size matters. It all starts with a pledge as our suggested first step, which is nothing more than an acknowledgement of the critical importance of the family. Will you help us to reach our pledge goal? After agreeing with the pledge, if you want to take it to the next level, leave your contact information as well. We will keep you updated on our efforts and connect you with others in your area you might be able to work with. We also encourage you to email me personally, jr@naturalfamilyfoundation.com, jr@nationalfamilyfoundation.com, if you have a project or an idea that you think might be helpful to our cause. This is a grassroots level movement. It can only start with you. And we ask that you please help us preserve and defend the family. And remember, as goes the family, so goes the nation. www.naturalfamilyfoundation.com naturalfamilystrong.com. www.naturalfamilystrong.com. It's your nation. It's your civilization. It's your choice. And the time is now. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Got a challenge for you when we come back. Everybody wants a challenge, right? Class reunions this weekend. Uh-oh. What did I just do here? I lost my soundboard.
Uh-oh.
Oh, this is it or not? That it? No. Hey, this is Last Call, B.J. Edwards and Mr. Anderson. Thanks for tuning in today. It does mean a lot to us. We do appreciate it. Are they problems or opportunities, folks?
Salute to all the veterans,
Yeah.
families that supported our veterans, sacrifices made.
Last Call, a certified red pill distributor. We've been talking about the natural family. We've been talking about the family. I read a great article about how the family is so integral, woven through society, holding it together, and how in order to change that society, you have to unravel that family. And boy, Mr. Anderson, is that not what we see today? It used to be inch by inch. Now it seems to be mile by mile. Of the problems we see in America today, we believe that America is in trouble because the family is broken. And it naturally follows that as goes the family, so goes the nation. As goes the family, so goes education. As goes family, so goes the government. As goes family, so goes business, the news media, entertainment, and the church. The church needs to step up. Church leadership needs to engage the culture. We had a meeting this week with regards to the library, and we invited several churches and pastors. There's no reason that at least one of those would show up. No reason at all that we couldn't get at least one of those. Yet, Mr. Anderson, you were at the meeting. What did you see? How many pastors did you see?
I didn't see any,
Yeah.
and I heard several say, I wish the pastors would come help us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the congregation to tell their pastors.
Thank you. Thank you. And fathers, leaders, you are the leaders. You're the leaders in the family. And you have to be the guardrail in the church, the generator. We can't do this in your church. You have to. We can't do this in your family. You have to. You see what's happening. You see the chipping away at the foundation. Or do you refuse to see it?
It's like they got jackhammers now.
True. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. It's going to happen unless you step up to the plate. If the families are the key, then we have to have that structure. We have to have the leadership. And that's one of the things, that's why I disagree totally with the sexual aspects of the article. Again, great article, but to put this all in the sexual aspect is not quite there. It's very important, critical, huge. But there's a leadership role to be played in the family. Somebody has to be the leader or you have anarchy. No leader? And isn't that what we see in the streets of America today? In our colleges? Isn't that what we see? So when we're talking about the church, and we're talking about church leadership, we can talk about pastors, deacons, church leaders. And yes, we need their help. We need them to stand with us. Maybe we need them to help encourage the fathers. I don't know how that works. Maybe it's a two-way street back and forth. But it needs to be acknowledged that without the fathers, without the family, without that structure, we're going nowhere. And fast. And nature abhors a vacuum. And it will be taken up, and it is being taken up by a nefarious source. Some would call it the devil. But the devil works like God, through people. And we were talking about this at the meeting the other day. Our enemy. I was invited to speak at a church function. And we had our pledge there at the church function. And I asked by a show of hands how many believed in the pledge. Everybody, all hands up. And I said, and I passed out a packet. In that packet is a little slip of paper. And on that slip of paper is the pledge. Would you please sign that and date it? And I want you to know that on our website, we may eventually publish some people that support the pledge. Your name might appear. Now, I found out how many people in that room were committed, and I don't care what your excuse was. I don't care. It's the right thing to do, the right thing to support. We found out how many people were committed. And that gets us back to our challenge. If you want to fix what is wrong in America, you have to fix the family first. Nothing else will work without the family foundation being restored to its natural state. How are you going to fix it? If you can't sign an acknowledgement that you believe in the family and that it needs your support for whatever reason, if you can't sign that, do you think that our opposition has gone, well, I don't like the color of the fingernail polish of the transgender, so no, I'm not going to support them. No. Christians will do that. Conservatives will do that. But our enemy won't. They are hell-bent on destroying the family. And they will not quit until that is done. Woody Hayes said that he never had a player that tackled somebody with a smile on their face. Sometimes you got to get down and dirty, folks. Sometimes you got to get in the game. You're going to get your helmet turned sideways. You're going to offend a few people. You got to make a decision whether it's the right thing to do. To know to do good, not to do it. What does the Bible say? To him, that's a sin, or her. You've got to be committed. We have good friends that are going out to New York that are going to parade in front of Hillary's home. Good for them. And they are committed to doing that. Great. That's the kind of commitment we need. We don't need to be splintered. Well, my specialty is this, the fingernail polish. My specialty is pro-life, or my specialty is marriage, or my specialty is divorce, or whatever it is, pornography. Well, I don't care. The enemy is committed, and they're united. And they're united in destroying the family. We're ignoring it. Maybe because it's so obvious. Maybe because it's so personal, but it doesn't make any difference. You learned this morning that once the family goes, goodbye, nation. Back to the challenge. If you want to fix what's wrong in America, you have to fix the family first. And by the way, we define the family as one man, biological born, one woman, biological born. We have to say that today. Yeah. Crazy. In a lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship with our biological and or adopted children. Lifelong committed? You mean I can't have sex before marriage? It just works better if as a nation we focus on that. We're so far away from that. I don't expect that to happen overnight, but I'd like to reel that back in a little bit. Actually, all the way, in order for this to work. There's studies out there that show you that when the man and the woman are both virgins, you don't get into that 50% divorce rate. Let me put it that way. There seems to be a stronger commitment, less interference. If you want to fix what's wrong in America, you must fix the family first. Nothing else will work without the family foundation being restored to its natural state, whether it be the establishment of government, business, media, entertainment, education, or the church. If the family is not in its proper place and form, all these institutions will be rendered helplessly ineffective. That's a fact that we state. Our challenge to you, first of all, if you see a bigger issue in America, then tell us what it is and state your case.
And we'll work on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to speed you up because I got a special song I want to close out the show with.
One more thing. If you cannot prove it, then we challenge you to join our cause and lend your skills and available resources to our efforts. You already know the consequences if you're not successful. If not now, when? If not you, who? Go, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, this is a Marine singing. I think. Where is the...
Lewis. One question was raised about how we teach our young people, and I'm a former Marine, and I became aware that there are two verses, and we need to hear the second verse, which says, "Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that has made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Last Call with BJ Edwards.